Hi, I'm Heather Quick with the Quick Law Group, Divorce and Family Law for Women. Today, I'm going to talk about prenuptial agreements and basically the three things you need to know, which is who needs one, what does it entail, and when do you get one? Because I've found that there is a misconception about prenuptial agreements. That being, I think you're probably picturing it in your head already. Like this really old guy with white hair and all these wrinkles, maybe even a cane, and a very young 20-year-old beautiful woman. That's what pops in my head. And that's probably from preconditioning from movies or whatever. And that's just what we think is the classic, that's who needs a prenup. And if I'm not a millionaire, billionaire, it's a waste of time and money. And that's what I wanted to talk about today because I don't think that's the truth. I think that as we work and begin to build assets, particularly for women, the average age of getting married is now over 30. Most women have their professional degrees and jobs, maybe even some property and retirement. And what I am hoping is that you'll consider protecting that with a prenuptial agreement and at least talking to an attorney about it, because the law is ever changing. And who knows what it's going to be in 5 to 10 years, but it is evolving. And the law is evolving to meet with the times and where women are and the way they contribute financially to the marriage. I think that you have assets to protect. It's not just for the men to initiate it. And also, the one thing that I know so many women don't really think about until they are getting divorced. But as a divorce attorney, I think about it a lot. And I think as women going into a marriage, and men, hopefully it's, everybody's in love and happy when they're entering a marriage, but you make certain decisions. And I think women still sacrifice their career more often than men to stay home and raise the children. You can protect your, basically investment in your children. And I don't mean that to cheapen what you're doing, but if you are a professional earning, say $80,000 to $100,000 a year, both you and your spouse decide that you're going to stay home with the children. 5 years out of the workforce is a lot in the way that our technology changes and the jobs. You may not be employable at that same level if and when you decide to re-enter the workforce. And also, if there's a divorce, all those wonderful mutual decisions that everybody made when they were happy and in love have kind of gone out the door. And if I have heard it once, I've heard it a million times, well, she can go get a job, which I think, it's a lot harder to stay home and raise your kids. And the paycheck is a lot less, at least monetarily. Yes, you get a lot of emotional fulfillment, but after a divorce, that really doesn't pay the bills. There are ways within a prenuptial agreement that we can factor that in, and we can say, hey, if you guys can, decide you're going to take a break from the workforce, raise the children for the benefit of the entire family, that then in the event of a divorce, there's going to be some kind of, equalizing payment for that. There's going to be something. It's just something that I would love for you to consider, because I don't think many people talk about it, and until it's too late, which is when we're in the divorce process and then we're looking at, assets, liabilities, income, but nobody's talking about what was the value that you brought to the table during that time you were at home and that loss of income. I know that we think about it. I've been in many divorce cases and mediations, and we discuss that, but we haven't really put a value on it. And there is a way to do that in a prenup. And frankly, if you think, if your husband's thinking, your husband-to-be is thinking he's gonna do it, you can make it mutual. There's just so many things. I went to a class once and they talked about a prenup that had been drafted by a couple, and they were a little older when they got married, but they were so specific that it was in the prenup that the wife was never to ask for directions when the husband was driving. And it's so crazy, but it kind of made it light of fun. They were just hey, listen, let's have some rules here while we're gonna be married. You're not gonna do this, you're not gonna do that. So if you could think of it in that way, it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom and financial. There could be some fun things to do that you could put in there, but at the end of the day, I see more women who are coming to the office to have us look at the prenup. The husband's drafted because he is the one who maybe has the assets at the time of marriage. And I think many women in the exact same situation just aren't thinking the same way. And part of our mission at the Quick Law Group is just to help women understand, now maybe you're in that position, you have these rights to do that. So, you are the person who maybe should come and talk to us about a prenup. The second thing is, well, what is it? Well, it's a contract. Now, it's very specific. You don't hear it a lot as far as, well, what's a prenup versus a postnup? And I shorten it just because that's what we do, but it's a prenuptial agreement. Pre, being the operative word, is before the marriage. If you don't get married, it's not a valid contract. So you can come to an agreement, but obviously what makes it, enforceable is the marriage thereafter. And there are a lot of things. Sometimes we even put in there like, hey, after 20 years, this thing doesn't even exist. If we've been together that long, we'll just be at the mercy of the laws. But keep in mind, it's not the laws of today, it's whatever they're gonna be in 20 years. So that's where having a prenup can give you some of that security in the law. It also includes, there is financial disclosure. There are several requirements that have to be done to make it valid. This is one of those things, well, and as a lawyer, many things I would say, don't go to, and get a form and fill it out. That's most likely not going to be enforceable. And it's not worthwhile to do that because it's just, no one's going to uphold it. So what you want to do is make sure that it is done the right way, because if you're going to spend the time and money, make sure it's an agreement that's enforceable. And a postnuptial agreement, it doesn't happen very often. It's very separate, and I could talk about like the pros and cons of that. And we've certainly done some, but at that point, you are married. So it happens sometimes maybe people are looking to get separated, or they're trying to reconcile, but trust has been broken. So it's a little bit different in the way that it's used, but we certainly see them, and they are enforceable if done the right way. Keep in mind that, one of the things, and not that that I've heard before, I've heard a lot of things, is, well, let's do a prenup, but I don't want him to know what I have. So that is not allowed, because you do have to have disclosure. And it's, generally speaking, if you're the one who wants to have a prenup, then, before the marriage is really a good time, because everybody's happy and in love and excited, which can be, if it's not done correctly, you can sign something that may be very, very unfair to you, something that's just not a smart decision. So it does require being advised by an attorney, and it really is not going to be upheld if it was something very shady. But that being said, you are an adult, and if you sign a contract that has you agreeing to certain things, don't think that, well, in the movies, I saw this one movie with George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones, and they didn't, they got it tossed out. It's a movie, and every state's different. So you sign a prenup in Florida and you get married here, and then you move to New York or Georgia. It's different, and not to bore you with all of those different state things, but the key is, if you have any assets, and even a house, even a beginning of a retirement, because that first $20,000 to $50,000 you put in that 401k, that is the one that's compounding and going to be worth a lot of money in 15, 20 years. And it shouldn't be equally divided down then. You should really have it clearly defined. And those are the kind of things that we can do. So part of what I'm trying to do is just help you understand, if you have something, just be smart. As you've worked this hard for it, we know the divorce rate is about 50%. So, let's look at it from that financial perspective and at least consider, is this something that I want to do to protect myself? So many people look at that when they've been through a divorce. We all learn sometimes, hindsight's 20/20, and we learn the hard way on a lot of things. And they know they have been through this before, so that second marriage, later in life, after going through a bad divorce, they know they need to protect what they have. Which at least there is that knowledge there because they've been through it. So obviously the best way would be to learn from those who've gone through it before. Try to at least learn about it. Determine if this is what applies to you. It doesn't apply for everybody. Not everybody needs a prenup, but a lot of women do, specifically because they've brought stuff into the marriage, and they're more likely than not going to put their career on hold. And I think that is the best way to protect that eventuality in a divorce, is to really plan ahead for those types of things. If you are, later in life, say you have children from a prior marriage, the prenup is really important from a perspective of protecting your assets for your legacy and what's going to happen after your death. Because if you don't have a prenup, even if you're in the will, I'm not going to get into all that right now. It can get really deep into a lot of facts and it can be very specific. But the reality is, when you're married, your spouse has certain rights if you pass away. And if you don't have a will or a prenup, then you may have children from a prior marriage that aren't going to be entitled to as much of their share, and that wasn't your intent. So, it all comes down to, what is your intent, what do you want? But that's why I bring this up, because you may not have even thought of it, and it's important to begin to look at those things prior to getting married, because that's the time that you really can make a lot of those decisions and agreements on how things will be handled and passed on after a divorce. And lastly is when. Well, not the day of the wedding. So that's really not the best time. And trust me, I've been called, hey, I'm getting married next week in Hawaii. Can you do this in 3 days? Can we? Maybe. It's not the best decision. So, and that happens because you think about, oh no, now we're getting down to the wire and it's coming up. I haven't done this. It's the same thing. Oh, we don't have a will and we're going on a plane for the first time leaving our kids. Can you do this today? Of course, those things happen and we procrastinate the things that we, kind of want to avoid doing or having that difficult conversation. So I would encourage you, if you are about to get married, thinking of getting married, the date is set, at least talk to us, at least find out, hey, should I get one or not? And then we can map it out. Because the worst thing is to wait till, a few days before, a week before, then there's really not enough time. And then you really run the risk of it not being upheld because it was rushed, duress, walking down the aisle, signing papers, and that's not very romantic either. It's best to get this handled, a month or so before the wedding, and then put it in a drawer. Because honestly, my thought in a prenup is I want it to protect you, and we can draft documents to protect you in the event of the divorce, but hopefully you're never gonna need it. And it'll just sit in a drawer, but you're gonna know, hey, I did the smart thing, I was intelligent, and I really looked at this the way an adult would look at it prior to getting married. And frankly, ladies, the way a man would look at it. So, that's my point. They would do it in your shoes. So let's begin to think that way. And yes, the wedding is a wonderful thing and very romantic, but just be smart about it. And if this is something that would help you down the road, at least consider it, get informed so that you can be protected. Because it just makes it so much easier down the road. And if you need any help with this, and if you have questions, we really encourage you to call us at the Quick Law Group. We do videos around these topics and all kinds of topics of family law for women. Subscribe to the channel and follow us, so then you'll know when something's coming. Thank you so much.